Hey there and welcome. Today I want to share with you my thoughts on the current state of things as I see them and the way humanity is actually being abused, enslaved through mind control, an actual sadistic abuse cycle. Now, if you are familiar with narcissistic abuse, this will be familiar to you as well, but I don't think this is only limited to narcissistic personality disorder. I think anyone lacking empathy, anyone being in the cluster B group of individuals can take part in this kind of abuse. So the basic cycle of abuse is formed by three different stages: idealization, devaluation, and discard. That's very simplified. I want to dig into each and every one of them and kind of draw parallel lines from individual abuse to societal abuse to form the big frame around the big picture of how humanity is actually surviving these days and what we're going through. So the idealization phase is basically something that a lot of people call love bombing. And love bombing is not only limited to romantic relationships. This is basically supplying the target of abuse with large amounts of attention, positive attention. Sometimes it can be compliments, it can be validation, it can be just quality time, it can be gifts, it can be acts of service. If you know of the 5 languages of love, it can be each and every one of these things, but on an exaggerated scale. In the love bombing stage, the target receives a lot of attention. I have broken up the abuse cycle into more than 3 stages, and I'm going to talk about each and every one of them separately as I see them. They don't really have to be absolute separate. Sometimes they can morph into each other, but I found interesting just separating them in that way so we can actually draw the lines later. So after the love bombing, you have isolation, where the abuser is actually isolating the target of their abuse. And that can mean extreme love bombing when they are actually spending a lot of time with you. You don't have any more time for other people that you used to have. It can mean also bad-mouthing other people from the target's life and trying to ruin the target's relationship with these people. It can mean also making up stories behind their back and telling people fake stories about the target so people would draw distance between themselves and the target, and then the target is not aware of why these people are becoming more and more distant from them. That's also part of the isolation. Now, the isolation can also be physical. The third stage that I decided to state separately is the rocking the belief in self. This can be also emotional abuse or mental abuse, but I decided to separate it. It's basically having these small comments here and there about things that you might be excited about, that you might be good at, and just trying to rock your belief in yourself in any way possible. You might have a passion or a dream, and these people would try to ruin it for you, try to ruin even your basic belief in who you are, what you are, your abilities, your skills, everything that you are. There's like no limits to these people in terms of what they will attack to try and rock your foundations. This is the stage where the abuser starts to inject fear into the target, and that can be done in many different ways. The next stage I want to talk about is mental abuse and emotional abuse. Mental abuse can be creating states of instability in the mutual relationship, creating cognitive dissonance in the target. The abuser can act like they're mad and not tell the target what the reason is, and just a lot of crazy making. Emotional abuse can be a little bit more transparent because it's an open attack in a way. This is where narcissists usually derive their supply in terms of emotional supply. Your anger, tears, depression, anything that might arise in you, these people will take as supply. And of course, supply is not only limited to emotions, but this is a good example for it. The next stage that I have decided to separate is verbal abuse and shaming, plus social abuse, calling names, shaming, using fly monkeys or enablers to actually make the target feel like they're doing something wrong, like they're not right, they're not okay, they're the odd one out. And that's also part of social abuse, trying to isolate, again, the victim. Everything is about isolation in some level, because when you are one-on-one with the abuser, no one can really help you out, and you only have your own perspective to count on the reality of things, because the abuser will never tell you the truth. They're actually only about deceiving and destroying things. They're not about building and telling the truth. The next level of abuse or stage of abuse is the physical abuse and financial abuse. I've chosen to put the financial because finance is actually something that is material. So you got physical abuse, that can be hitting, spitting, kicking, shoving, anything of that type. And financial abuse might be something that they are able to create if the fear in the target has been successfully injected and they have become dependent on their abuser. The next and final stage of abuse is actually the discard. It can be one of many discards, wherein after the discard you would have a period of silence or calm, and then the cycle of abuse will renew and you would start again from the love bombing and going through all of the stages again. And by discard I mean either the abuser is discarding the victim or the target is actually leaving the abuser. The discard can also be a final discard, either by never repeating the cycle again, or a discard that actually results in the murder or killing of the target of abuse or self-defense, and the abuser ends up being dead. I want to mention really quickly some techniques that are used to actually make this abuse cycle possible by the abusers. First and foremost, enmeshment is one of the most important things that they try to achieve, which is basically extreme closeness between the two, a place where individuality doesn't have respect anymore, and you're basically being told what you need to think, feel, eat, drink, when, how much, how many people you're allowed to talk to, and it's something that breeds control. When you give trust to an abuser, they would use that enmeshment to create control, because you have given them the power of your own sovereignty. The second thing I want to mention is future faking. In future faking, basically the abuser is drawing this beautiful picture about the future of the target and themselves, and of course they don't mean to make this happen. It's just a fantasy to be grown inside the target's mind, and the abuser knows throughout the whole cycle of abuse that this is just a lie. It's not something that they're actually working towards. It creates false trust in the target. This can be done also in the first stage of the love bombing and the extreme attention being given to the target. I want to talk a little bit about the fear injections inside the target. It actually creates false perceptions of being helpless, being fragile, actually needing the abuser for survival, for thriving, for happiness, for well-being. And also it kind of rocks the belief in self, the belief in self-sustainability. And the most devastating result is actually the need that is created in the target for the abuser. This is why you have so many people, women especially, who are being abused and they find it extremely hard to leave. It's really easy to judge from the side, but when you have such crazy making and people toying with your emotions, beliefs, fears, and everything that you are, it's not that easy to leave. So this is how they create need in the target. The next thing I want to talk about is gaslighting and overriding reality. I've put it in the fourth stage of abuse, in the mental and emotional type of abuse, where you have lies, where you don't have any genuinity, when you have overriding of history, overriding of events that just happened between the two of you, and both of you were there, so you know what the truth is, but these people would just try to make you feel insecure in your own memory, in your own beliefs, in your intuition, Gaslighting is something that is very powerful in abusers' hands, and it creates cognitive dissonance. It creates confusion. When you have conflicting pieces of information simultaneously in your mind and you don't know really which one is the true one, this really breeds cognitive dissonance, and this destabilizes the psyche of the target. It's funny because I sound as if I'm giving a tutorial on how to abuse people, or I'm just breaking it down so we could see what actually has been happening and happening now in the world with this 19 thing that we have. Let's dive into it. So, the first stage, as I said, was the love bombing and the extreme attention given to all communities, countries, businesses, civilians, people getting sick, people not feeling well, people having breathing difficulties. You got the first stage. The second stage is the physical isolation. Well, you're not allowed to go out and go to your job anymore because your job is not deemed essential and you have to stay home. Not only do you have to stay home, but you're not allowed to go to the park or the beach and breathe some clear air because you are a danger to other people. This is isolation. This helps create emotional isolation as well, because if you're not allowed to meet your friends and you're used to meeting your friends and that's your way of communicating with them, going out every Friday night or whatever, breaks traditions, breaks good habits of, let's say, going to the gym twice a week. You don't see those people anymore, and even like secondary, tertiary relationships that you might have had in your life, they become non-existent to a point. And this is weakening the individual on various levels. It can also be viewed as social abuse, but I've decided to put the social abuse together with the shaming and the verbal abuse. So, you know that during this time, suicide rates had skyrocketed, breakups have skyrocketed. We can see the results of what isolation breeds into humanity in general. The third stage, as I said, was the rocking of the belief in self. You're told that you're just this organic body, you're fragile, you're weak, you're vulnerable bunch of cells. You're helpless against a mighty, tiny danger that you cannot even see. And you need someone else to save you and protect you from this dangerous little invisible thing. This is where need is created, because you're being told that this too shall pass if you do exactly what we say, how we say it, and as long as we tell you to do it. So you need to be meek, tiny little person and do exactly what we say, or things will get worse, right? This type of attack has the power to induce mass conversion disorder. If you're not familiar with the condition, please read about it. It's really interesting. Even in House, the series, they had an episode about it on a plane, as I recall. Just research it, read about it, go watch the episode. It is fascinating. So you have the whole of humanity in a state of fear. You have the mass media showing you images and videos of people just laying on beds, not being able to breathe by themselves, or people on the street just collapsing. And you don't want to be one of these people. So of course the logical reaction would be fear. And when you watch that 24/7, you help sustain that emotional reaction in you. It's a continuous state of being, which is really unhealthy. Your stability and your belief in yourself, they're both rocked. You have fears that are not your own. They have been injected in you, just like a narcissistic mother would tell her daughter that love does not exist in the world, and now the daughter believes it and is fearful about men in her life. The fourth stage of mental abuse and emotional abuse is related, of course, to the third one. The fear-inducing content on media all day, every day, everywhere. The stripping of all emotional support due to isolation and loss of relationships. You've got basically a stripping of the person completely, of all habits, of all relationships. You're left in the nude, so to speak, in your apartment. You're not able to work, you're not able to get paid. Who knows how much money you have for food. You are in a state of fear and you are progressing through the abuse cycle to the next stage, which is basically shaming, social abuse, and verbal abuse. I forgot to mention in the second stage, I wanted to mention the spiritual abuse, where when you're being isolated, you cannot go and have your weekly sermons, you cannot go and interact with people that you're used to interacting on a weekly basis or how often you go. This also rocks your spiritual stability. Even though I don't really believe in that, you can pray at home, you can, keep your spiritual activities alive even if you're by yourself. But this is also an attack on the person. So the next stage is the verbal abuse and the social abuse. That includes shaming, that includes making people who do not comply with the general agenda feel like, seem like, sound like, look like they're not okay, making them look like they are the enemy in the eyes of the public who actually believe the movie. In this stage, there is use of the compliant subject to this abuse to cause harm to the ones who actually are true to themselves, to the ones who are actually the scapegoats in the family. When you have a scapegoated child and there's enablers, the enablers are actually the secondary abusers. So this happens on global scale as well. You have all these people opening businesses, not allowing people without a mask to go in. I can't go and buy food unless I wear a mask anymore, in my country, in my city. And you know how it goes. We've seen the videos, we've seen the people shaming, people hitting, people resorting to physical abuse. You're not able to get your physical supplies anymore unless you comply, unless you are a part of the cycle, unless you become an enabler yourself. There's name calling. There is inducing shame and guilt that are toxic, that are not truthful, they're not genuine because you have done nothing. It is just like this psychotic mother hitting her daughter and calling her names, making her to be the bad guy, and the girl is just like sitting there crying and being hit and being abused and also being made to feel like, look like, sound like as if she is the abuser herself. You're seeing actually an adult person in an adult body, and then you're seeing a tiny little child in a small body, and who is really the abuser if one is hitting the other and the other is crying? Same story. So unless you wear the proper attire, behave in a proper new manner, almost like a new ritualistic type of behavior, you are deemed to be faulty and you're deemed to be wrong and deserving punishment. And this is how we actually progress to the sixth stage of abuse, which is the financial and physical abuse, where you actually start to see people being arrested, physically abused, people being hit, tortured, tased, smashed on the ground, hit, beat up, completely brutally attacked just for not having a proper attire, for not completing the rituals that they're being told to complete, for not giving up their freedoms, for not giving up who they are and what they are. There is stripping of personal freedoms, of human rights, of sovereignty rights. There are unlawful arrests. There's forcing of people to wear masks that actually cause damage to the human body. Don't believe me? Read about it. Read about hypercapnia. Read about lack of oxygen to the body. Read about what fainting actually is. It's hypoxia in the brain. When you don't have enough oxygen in the brain, your body just falls down, so the blood from the limbs can go straight into the brain and give it its oxygen. This is why we faint. This is the dynamic of self-preservation that happens in a body that is lacking oxygen in the brain. This is why you see people just fainting. They're not coughing, they're not having difficulty breathing, they just faint. So this is what these masks are doing to the human body. When we need oxygen to the brain, we are forced not to get it. We're forced to breathe CO2. In this stage, you'll also see forced inoculations, imprisonment without a crime, being dragged, kidnapped actually, from your home into these isolation hotels that are military organized and military controlled, destruction of property, financial abuse, not being able to work anymore, your business being closed, you're being fined with some ridiculous sum that makes no sense. And you also have restrictive control of resources. So you're not a free human being anymore. You need to listen to Big Brother about every little step that you do throughout your day, throughout your life. You also need to ask the news what you're allowed to think, because you're not allowed to have free thought anymore. There's one official narrative and you should be following it at all times. Otherwise, you are deemed faulty and you will be discarded. And this is when you have the 7th stage of the discard, which is kind of scary in terms of the big picture, because after enough damage has been done to the target, usually a discard comes. When you cannot supply enough loosh to the abuser, you are being discarded. Discard can be basically putting you behind bars and then releasing you one day, and then you're off to the first stage of the cycle. You're so-called free to be abused again. Or it can actually mean murder, killing. The target can actually end up being dead. If we get to see the forced inoculations that are being planned right now around the world in 179 nations, I pray to God that we won't. But if this happens, a lot of people are going to be discarded after the vaccine, because it's not just a vaccine, what they plan to inject in us. And a lot of people are not going to survive this. I'm saying this as a medicinal chemist. I'm not saying this is a theorist of something that does not exist. So after the 7th stage of the discard, you have a somewhat intermittent calm or respite. But in a lot of cases, the target of abuse will earn a character assassination or a smear campaign. So it's not even enough for the abusers to take you out. They have to smear your name. They have to gaslight the rest of the slaves to believe a useful narrative that will allow them to stay in the margins of allowed behavior. And the cycle of abuse of the discarded one serves as a threat and as an example to the witnesses, so they would comply and join the system in the role of the abusers themselves, so they won't end up being the number 7, the discarded. This is how they make flying monkeys in narcissistic abuse or in sadistic abuse. The fear injection is so potent in them that they lack all courage or love for the truth, that they would comply with anything, even if it means murdering their own brothers and sisters. Just like you had in Holocaust, you got the capo. Read about it if you don't know what it means. So this cycle of abuse is infinite. No one really escapes the discard by a compliance. That's the biggest misconception among flying monkeys or enablers. They think that they would escape the abuse themselves. But it is really ridiculous to think that way, because what do you think happens when everybody else is gone? They're gonna abuse you, so you're next in line. If you're an enabler, there are infinite rounds of this cycle of abuse. There are plenty of chances for all to reach the discard, and even the ultimate discard. The only way to break the cycle is to fight it, to not comply, to not change yourself into an enabler, to speak the truth, to do the truth. Exercise your power while you still have it, to not allow to be reduced to something that you're not, to see things for what they are. It's a mind control slavery program, and it's not only working on personal level, it's working on society level, on humanity level. One last thing I want to mention before I end this video is, before the discard, the final discard, the abusers, they not only want to discard you, they want to steal your soul. They want to steal who you are. They want to destroy you. This is how they derive their pleasure. And when we talk about individual abuse, sadistic people love picking individuals who are strong, who are strong-willed, who are individualistic, who have colorful character, interesting opinions. They have their own opinions since they're individualistic. And the abuser wants to take all of that color and turn it into gray. Just wants to turn everyone into this gray mash, nothingness. and then spit it out, and on to the next, almost like a hungry person eating sunflower seeds, taking the content out and spitting the shell, throwing it to the trash as if it's nothing anymore, as if it never was anything inside of it. The abusers want to change who you are from the inside, infiltrate your psyche, change your soul, make you take the wrong choices. We're all in a massive abuse cycle right now, and humanity is under sadistic abuse cycle. We're stuck in it. And this whole dynamic is a system of choices, of tools to basically enslave everything that is humane, everything that is empathetic, everything that actually makes us human, and destroy it. It's a trauma-based mind control to enslave the whole of humanity, to destroy empathy, to destroy compassion, to destroy brotherly love, to destroy families, to destroy relationships, to destroy prosperity of individuals, to destroy individuality, to destroy spirituality, to destroy life. If you have ever been through sadistic abuse, even as a spectator, I'm sure you can relate to some of what I've shared with you today. I hope this brings some groundedness in the truth and gives you some more motivation to stay your ground, speak your truth, and not be afraid. Stay strong, my friends, and I wish you a beautiful day, afternoon, evening, night, morning, whenever this catches you. See you next time.